Well folks, welcome to the latest video where we're going to take a quick look at this old Fusee watch. As you can see, it's got a beautiful engraving on, as you often find with these old watches. And you can just see just here, this regulator disc here, it's actually made of silver. And if we just come around a bit, it's not so easy to see from the camera there, but the engraving on this particular watch is quite unusual in that it has relief on it, so it's like curved and curled, as well as in a 2D plane, also in a 3D plane, which is quite unusual. Must have been a much more expensive watch originally. So using a burr by hand without the Dremel, you can rub clean the gilding, because it's gilded on top, and it's coming up really nice. So if we just rotate this around, we can see Goodwin's there, and it says let's say 18. I think it says 1834. I don't know if that's the date or the serial. Sometimes it is the date, sometimes it is a serial number for that particular maker. And you can also see very, very Georgian looking writing there, which says London. So it's an English watch. So it is a Fusee watch, and Fusee chains on it. If you swing it like that, you can just see the wheel there. The wheel is ticking back and forth, which suggests that this watch will probably work, which is one of the reasons why I chose it as a subject of this video. So if you look at the other side of the watch, you can see it has a nearly intact enamel dial, which doesn't seem to have any cracking on it or anything like that. It's not in very, very good condition, in fact. It only has the one hand on. That's pretty normal with these old Fusee. You very rarely get the minute hand. I'm not really sure why that is. Maybe they just take them off or something, I'm not sure. Or maybe there's a shortage of minute hands, perhaps. If you were going to restore the watch, of course, you could put it back fairly easily. Those are the remains of the second hand. That's the hour hand. Most of these Fusee have a little hole here, so you can put a pin through. Something which modern watches have superseded, really. Okay, so you can just see here, just there, the dials are held on with little pins or chocks. So that's what will come off next. Okay, so essentially the dial attaches just like a normal watch with a series of pins here. 1, 2, 3, series of pins. So this brass piece here, this is called an adapter plate, because back in those days there was not really any standardization. These are the front of house cogs. This is the transfer gear, and this one here is the R wheel. And let me just point out here, just here, you can see there's a piece of paper, and this seems to be standard from from 1830s watches, you often see this as the dial washer. And they look in good condition. Could do with a bit of a clean, but they're not too bad. Okay, so in those days, dials were not really very standard, so they used to have adapter plates which look pretty much like this, and you can see the dial is actually chocked with pins also, so this would allow it to fit into a particular case, and also the mismatch on these pins here on the movement itself, so it would allow that to happen too. Okay, so here we are with the top plate. Some of these screws look a little bit chewed up. If I can show you that. Yeah, some of them look a little bit chewed up, like this one. This is the case snap, which is fine. Otherwise, looks in pretty good order. There doesn't seem to be a lot of wear on it or anything like that. Seems pretty smart. That looks in good order. So we do have a bit of mystery here, in that there is a strange lever which clicks back and forth. At the moment doesn't seem to do very much, so I don't know if that's supposed to be attached to something or whatever, but this doesn't actually connect. See this hole here, this is for the dial pin, and this doesn't actually seem to have anything to do with the transfer gear because it's miles away, and it doesn't look like it could ever have that much movement really. So I'm not really sure what this is. Maybe it was an old quick release or a dial release, something like that. I'm going to leave it on the movement just in case somebody does know what it's for, but this watch also doesn't look like a chronograph, so but there's no connection between this and the top plate, so I don't really understand what would that do. I really don't know. It could be it could be an Amstrad where they had controls on the front of the Amstrads that didn't actually connect to anything. Maybe it could be one of those, just to sort of hoodwink the customer into thinking it has an extra feature and then charge more money for it, or something like that. People get up to these things. Even the ancient people did. So there you go. So that is a mystery, and if anyone knows what that is, let me know in the comments. So normally to discharge a fusee like this, if you flip it over, you would have just here, you would have a third wheel bridge, and you would be able to take this off and remove the third wheel. However, you can't really do that with this watch because it doesn't have one. So I'm going to do it a slightly different way. You can see here the fusee chain is pretty much wound off. Right, in fact it's attached about there. You can just see the end of it, and most of it's wound onto the drum, so that means that the watch has been wound down. Right, so what I'm going to do to take it off, and this is not really conventional practice, I have to say. Just getting it in focus there. I'm going to get it here. I'm going to push the drum in that direction to slacken off the chain, and then let it run down through my finger. And because the watch is pretty well, almost completely wound off already, I think that's pretty low risk. Right, so that's the end of the chain. There you go. There's obviously a lot of gloop in this movement because it's didn't exactly snap back, did it? Right, so that's the movement discharged. So one of the things that I would say is, when you have a Victorian lever fusee like this, when you take this off, essentially what happens is the lever, which is just under between those two pins there, that's the pivot for it, just there, the lever, like a normal Swiss watch, stops the movement from discharging, and you can't remove the pallet fork obviously without taking the plate off. And so with these watches you would turn them over. This one's in quite good condition actually, but there's a third wheel bridge under here which you would then remove, and you would hold the movement on the winder like that, remove the third wheel cog, and then allow the movement to discharge with the winder. However, with a verge fusee there is no lever, so essentially when you pull this off and take the wheel out, the pallets, the verges effectively, are replacing the lever. They actually come off with the balance wheel, and that would mean the watch would simply discharge itself. It would just go, and that's it. The whole thing would rapidly discharge. And so these older fusee much more tricky to sort out than the later, more technologically developed Victorian ones. So I am assessing this watch as I go along, and we can see there's a fair bit of rust on the balance cock screw. We may need to, if we're going to restore the watch, we may need to re-blue those. So, like a normal Victorian verge fusee, you have a little chock here which removes the balance spring, and this here is the regulator arm which is attached to this silver disc here, and you use the key to turn the silver disc and regulate the watch. You can also see here evidence of people desperately trying to raise the balance cock bridge, or balance cock rather, because it's obviously been causing a problem in some way. There's a fair bit of rust on there, but remember folks, this is 200 years old. So you have to forgive it a little bit. Okay, that's the end of this little video. Thanks very much for watching folks.